Hello, this is Patrick Barnard in Montreal. It is Friday, March 28th, and this is the 9th edition of the International Press Review. This edition of the International Press Review will focus on the rising authoritarianism of the Trump government in Washington, the way that's affecting people in the US of A and people in Canada. In fact, people are beginning to leave the United States and come to Canada at this point. This is something that's happened previously in the 1950s during the Vietnam War, and it's happening now. One of the people coming to Canada is a professor at Yale. His name is Jason Stanley, and he was interviewed on Friday, March 28th on the CBC's The Current. The CBC is the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. The Current is a radio program, very popular, hosted by Matt Galloway. And Matt Galloway introduced Jason Stanley to his listeners on this Friday.
Jason Stanley thinks a lot about fascism. As a philosophy professor at Yale University, his books unpack how fascist regimes use intimidation and propaganda to consolidate power. His most recent book is called Erasing History. It describes how authoritarians attack universities and education in an effort to rewrite the past and obscure the truth. Well, now, Jason Stanley is so worried about how that is playing out in the United States that he has decided to move to Canada. He's just accepted a new job at the University of Toronto with the Munk School of Global Affairs and Public Policy. And Jason Stanley joins us this morning from New Haven, Connecticut. Jason, good morning.
Good morning, Matt.
I was joking earlier saying that people in the United States will often say, I'm moving to Canada, when they don't like the results of an election, whatever party that might be that comes into power. You're actually doing this. Why did you decide that you want to make this leap?
Well, I think it's a global fight against authoritarianism, and Canada is a central target. It's not just Yale University and Columbia University who are being targeted. Trump is serious about Canada, and Canada has positioned itself as sort of a central player in this war against authoritarianism. Canadian values, social welfare system, universal health care, media and press freedom, all of these are under attack. They're dismantling the government in the United States. They're destroying free speech.
At the University of Toronto, Jason Stanley and his Yale colleague Timothy Snyder will be going to that university and teaching people there from all over the world about authoritarianism. Meanwhile, in the United States, the federal government is putting huge pressure on universities. That happened at Yale. The most egregious example is at Columbia University, where the federal government threatened to withdraw $400 million of funding unless changes were made in one department, the Department of Middle Eastern Studies, which has now been put under receivership by the authorities at Columbia, which incidentally is the university I went to. That is a shameful, shameful act, which has been noted by others and which is creating an atmosphere which is most fearful. Here is an example of other things going on: an arrest by Immigration and Customs Enforcement officials, ICE officials, of a graduate student at Tufts University. Here's a bit of footage from CBS News.
Well, let's go to Massachusetts now, where a Ring camera captured the moment ICE agents arrested a Tufts University graduate student. We want to show you that video up close. Watch the lower left corner here as authorities approached the young woman and handcuffed her. Now, this happened right outside an off-campus apartment building in Somerville, just north of Boston. A lawyer for the student says she is a Muslim Turkish student with a valid student visa. Let's go to our breaking news correspondent, Chanel Call, in the CBS newsroom in New York. Chanel, good to see you again today. That video is terrifying because when moments like that happen, you don't know who is grabbing you. So can you tell us what we know right now about that arrest?
Yeah, and Mugo, we actually also have another angle of that scene to share with you. So I want to show you that video right now. It essentially shows 6 plainclothes agents handcuffing 30-year-old Rumeysa Ozturk. Once we show you that video, you'll be able to see it, and you can also hear the person who captured this video actually noting that most of the officers there were masked.
Jason Stanley's book, How Fascism Works, takes a survey really all across the world, looking at authoritarian leaders building authoritarian systems. That might be Modi in India, Orban in Hungary, Erdogan in Turkey, or Trump in the United States. Now, Stanley is focusing on the features of authoritarianism and fascism: the strong, charismatic leader, the concentration on a mythical past, the attacks on the independence of the judiciary, the attacks upon civil society, particularly universities. Of course, the major, most striking symbol of all of this was the Hitlerian regime in Nazi Germany.
This year they say there are 800,000 pairs of boots standing heel to heel, waiting for the Führer's final speech. And the high spot comes when, after a detailed review of Nazi achievements, Hitler cries, "My life's fight has not been in vain."
Indem ich euch ihre Blicke weise ich, mein Lebenskampf ist nicht umsonst gekämpft. Sein Sowjetzeichen soll er vor sich hertragen und wir werden in unserem Zeichen wieder siegen.
And a central part of Hitler's appeal in the 1930s was a kind of comic masculinity. And authoritarians, fascists today, do the same thing. Now, in the early part of his book, Stanley was looking at the first successful Trump campaign, which was in 2016, and he asked himself the question, well, here is a group of people looking back to some mythical point in the past to make America great again. What decade might they be looking towards? And he answers that question, Mr. Stanley does, and I'd like to read a little passage to you. A hint about the decade, that's to say the important decade that Trump and company look back to, that was most salient in the Trump campaign, emerges from a November 18, 2016 Hollywood Reporter interview with Steve Bannon, the then president-elect's chief strategist, in which he remarks about the era to come that, quote, "it will be as exciting as the 1930s. In short, the era when the United States had its most sympathy for fascism."
February 20th, 1939. Just months before Hitler invades Poland and ignites the deadliest war in history, thousands of Nazis gather for a rally at an indoor arena. But this isn't Nuremberg or Berlin. This is Madison Square Garden in New York City.
The photograph you see on your screen now is not from 1939. It's from today. It's from a bookstore right in front of McGill University. The store is called Paragraph Books. It's where I bought Jason Stanley's book. And it's a display. It's really a telling one. It's a set of famous books about authoritarianism, totalitarianism, and fascism itself. Which brings us back to Jason Stanley's citation of Stephen Bannon in the book, How Fascism Works. That citation comes from an article written for The Hollywood Reporter, as I said, by Michael Wolff. There it is on your screen. It's an article that has been frequently cited because Bannon is the right-wing ideologue of Trumpism. He was in 2016, and he still is today, even though he's not in the present group working in the White House. Steve Bannon is a very particular figure. He laid out to Michael Wolff a plan for a 50-year populist rule in the United States. Bannon is someone deeply familiar with the right wing and its history in Europe. And when he says that the Trump period will be as exciting as the 1930s, he's not talking about FDR. He's talking about Italy under Mussolini and also Germany under Hitler. He calls himself, Bannon does, a Leninist, a revolutionary. Bannon is a symbol. Trumpism is a reality, and it is a right-wing revolution. Its color is not red, not black, but brown. And it is a revolution that promises, sadly, to eat its own children. This is Patrick Barnard for the International Press Review.